Welcome, everybody. It's great to have you. And here at Communitech, we're working hard to bring you business as virtual as much as possible while also supporting our members the best that we can. So before we kick things off today, I just want to take a moment to thank all of our courageous frontline workers for everything that they are doing in our community right now. And my name is Armin Eichhorn, and I'm an advisor on the Start and Scale team here at Communitech. And I'm thrilled to have Chad McCaffrey and Heather Galt join us today. Before I turn it over to Chad and Heather to kick things off, just a couple housekeeping items. Just a reminder, you will have seen as you joined that the session is being recorded. We do that so it can be accessed at a later date. And I also ask you that you please keep your microphone on mute. If you have questions during the session, feel free to put them into the chat. I'll make sure to bring those up during the session, and also at the end of it we will still have some time for questions, so just put them in the chat please if you can. And should we not get to your question, or if you have another follow-up question, just get back in touch with either myself or your Communitech advisor, and we're more than happy to put you in touch with Heather and Chad following this session. Now if you want to minimize the speaker view on the right-hand side, just so you can see the slides all the way, there is a little button where you can do that. And I also wanted to show you that we have more Ask Me Anything sessions coming up. They run every Tuesday at 2 p.m. So these are some of the next ones. So with that, we're gonna kick things off and get into the meaty part here. So meaningful partnerships for sales and marketing. Heather, how about you kick it off for us?
All right, thanks so much, Armin, and welcome everybody. It's really great to see so many folks joining us today. I'm really glad you're here. So Chad and I are going to spend a little bit of time today talking to you specifically about creating partnerships for sales and marketing. So partnerships is kind of a broad term, and you'll see that we can put partnerships into place around things like manufacturing, customer support, customer success, and so on. So partnerships can take a lot of formats, but for today, we're going to focus specifically on sales and marketing. What we do, we're going to cover off 5 different topic areas. So we'll start with a little sort of clarifying point around what exactly partnerships are in this particular context. And then we'll talk a little bit about setting your strategy. So if you are creating a partnership, how are you going to do it? What are the things you should be thinking about before you even go out and have those initial conversations? Then we'll talk about choosing your partners. So picking the right ones for the age and stage of your company, and also for the types of customers that you're going after. And then finally, we'll talk about what you might want to be thinking about after you've established that partnership. So setting your partners up for success, and then making sure you maintain a great relationship. Both Chad and I have a pretty lengthy history of experience in working in this area. So not only are we going to talk in general terms, but we'll actually share some of our past and current experiences in these areas as well. So if we can move to the next slide, Armin. So I wanted to sort of set this up a little bit with a little bit of humor. You can see in the picture here, there's a fisherman and a bear. And I think it might be hidden under the chat, but it says, "You give me half the fish and I'll tell my mom to let you live." So this is the kind of example of a partnership that we don't want to have, right? Where there's always a little bit of inequity, a little bit of a misbalance between the two partners, and we expect that. But ultimately, when we have a great partnership, it should be a win-win. It shouldn't be about, I'll let you live. It should be about both of you thriving and succeeding together. So what we're hoping to share with you today should help set you up to thrive with a new partner. We run things a little bit differently, Chad and I, when we do these webinars. Rather than throwing a bunch of content on the slides, we actually run it more like a podcast. So Armin is going to ask the questions that you'll see on the slides, and then Chad and I will provide our perspectives in each of the topic areas. So if you are hoping to take away a whole bunch of written content, probably not going to get a whole lot of that here, but what we will be doing, as you've noticed already, the recording of the webinar is happening, and so the webinar will be available afterward, and you're more than welcome to revisit it any time. And as Armin mentioned, Chad and I are both accessible as well. You can find us on LinkedIn, and you can connect with us through your Communitech advisor. So this is really going to be a Q&A, very conversational. Feel free to jump in anytime if you have a question. and we'll do our best to get to it as quickly as we can. So Armin, I'm going to turn it back to you, and let's jump into the first topic around what the hell exactly are partnerships.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, let's kick it off with WTF are partnerships. And Chad, if we can start with you, what exactly is actually a partnership?
Yeah, let's define this thing. Let's start there. The wonderful Paul Thompson that Heather knows likes to say it's the vaguest term in business. So, partnerships in my view refer to the process of working with third parties to get your offering into the hands of end customers, right? So when you're thinking about going in and selling something, there's a direct route, which is through a sales team, marketing team, or there's an indirect route, which we can call partnerships. The reason why people do that is, it's a very effective way to scale revenue without going through the expense. So when you're a lean team, many of us on the call are startups, we're trying to find routes to the market. Going through channels or going through partners is a really interesting way to do that, because you're going to bring your costs down and ultimately you're going to get your growth. So that's how I would define a partnership.
I think I would add to that, Chad, you kind of alluded to it, but the opportunity that sits here for sales and marketing partnerships in particular is to scale your reach into the market and scale it faster. And so there's different flavors of that, whether it's through a complementary product that maybe you can attach to, whether it's a channel that has expertise in a particular kind of activity. So lead gen, or, digital marketing, for example, those are all examples of partnership relationships that you might be able to build. But they can be as widely varied as the kinds of businesses that are on this call today, all over the map.
So you just mentioned, Heather, they can be very widely, widely different from each other. Chad, maybe throwing the ball back to you here. What are some of the different types of partnerships that exist, if any?
Yeah, so this is an important one. As Heather mentioned, and we'll focus mainly on revenue driving partnerships today. But yeah, just to talk them through, I think you think about it on one side, I like to think about it as the customer experience. All of us talk about customer journey nowadays. You want to think about it from sort of the marketing side all the way through to how you support a customer. So just to list them off, there's marketing, brand efforts, right? Co-marketing is how I think about that. So that's, doing some shared blog content. Maybe you do a podcast, similar content to this with a partner. You can do some interesting joint things these days. So there's definitely marketing thinking as it relates to the partnership. Then moving into sort of, I would bucket as sales partnerships. So affiliate and referral models is usually a place to start, right? That's usually a simple, you help me, I help you, scratch each other's back. There may be a kickback involved. There usually is as the referral. So I introduce Armin to a potential customer for him. He then, provides me a commission for that effort. Then you get into more of the heavier model, reseller, VAR, distribution type agreements. And those agreements are usually a lot more about joining up sales forces, joining up resources, depending on your model, right? So keep in mind, some of us have e-commerce type businesses versus sales teams, enterprise. It's very dependent on what your journey looks like in terms of how you're going to work with partners. And then lastly, I would mention professional services or managed service providers. So again, if you have a product that requires implementation, requires integration, some of these other things, like think of Salesforce, you may have professional services teams or agencies or otherwise that you leverage in order to install or implement your solution with a given customer. So that's how I would think about those buckets.
And I would add, Armin, before we move on, I think one thing that coming from a hardware background and actually working in a hardware and software company right now, partnerships can look a little bit different when you're a hardware company than they do when you're a SaaS company. So in the case of hardware, the inventory and how it moves and who owns it at what point in the funnel can have a big impact on the kind of structure that your channel relationship looks like. So keeping in mind that partnerships, Chad talked about kind of the array, and they can look a little bit different when you add the complexity of hardware as well.
What is the difference between business development versus partnerships? Chad, start with you again.
Yeah, this confuses everyone. I think sales, you can also throw in the mix here, right? What's biz dev? What's BD? What's sales? What's partnerships? I very clearly think about it, as I mentioned earlier, as indirect business, right? So in a business development sense, you're going to think about it as, you might have people that think about it as SDRs as well, which is important to highlight. So SDRs being sales development, that's another one to throw in there. But really the difference between the two is you have the direct sales force, you have it going that direction, and then you have partners that are working on the indirect channel. So you have a team that you've assembled. It could be one person to start, but they are focused on these other routes to get to your end customer. They're focused on setting up, recruiting those relationships. They're focused on activating and enabling those relationships, and ultimately driving revenue for the business. So you want to really separate how you think about what direct business looks like for you versus indirect.
And I would actually put them into, you think about the idea of a funnel, right? So your direct sales team can manage your funnel from top to bottom, everything from awareness to interest to engagement to pilot to purchase, and your indirect team can do the same. So they could focus just on a particular area. Maybe they're only managing, sort of awareness and interest and bringing you leads. That would be a business development partnership. Or maybe they have a separate industry that they're targeting that you can't reach, and they're going to manage that whole funnel for that industry. So what I would do, I think, Chad, you kind of went down that path, but think about them as separate paths to market that can own every piece of the funnel from top to bottom. And your partners can actually create new funnels for you that you wouldn't have had access to otherwise.
Awesome. Let's dive into setting your strategy. And I want to kick it off there with the question, why should I care about partnerships in the first place?
Yeah, so as we've mentioned already, you care from a cost perspective. You care about looking at your marketplace. When you're doing your initial segmentation and you're looking at your target market, and ideally you focus there a lot from a marketing perspective, you're going to look at the best way to get in touch and in front of people. So initially you're looking at, with the referral and affiliate model as an idea, you're looking at ways to get access. So access is really important when we're talking about building pipeline for our business in a B2B world. What's an easy way to get that? Is there an adjacent company or two? Is there folks in the market, consultants and others that work really closely with my target buyers? Can I drive influence through them in order to get access to those conversations? That's how you're thinking about it initially. So that's why you should care. It's going to drive that value for you, and you're going to be able to get there in a less expensive way than you would maybe going yourself.
You also can get there with more credibility, right? So beyond the cost side of actually getting there more efficiently, sometimes partners have better brand recognition, especially when you're an early stage company. They'll have way better brand recognition than you do. And so their customers trust them where they might not necessarily immediately trust you. So working through a channel partner can get you a shorter decision cycle. It can get you a really big leg up with potential customers, especially when you're talking to enterprise and larger clients.
Yeah, and quickly add to that, the affiliation is a huge point you just made. Like just having the affiliation and the relationship with a more well-known brand, if we talk about brand and marketing value, just having that alignment in the eyes of a buyer is really helpful for you, especially as a smaller business.
What are some of the main benefits of a partnership?
I feel like this unpacks that previous one further. I think, as we talked about efficiency, what the credibility is a big thing here. There's a major benefit there. I think it goes unnoticed. A lot of us think we need to move the rock up the hill ourselves. And again, depending on what your business model is and depending on who your target audience is, there's way easier ways to reach that audience than you might be thinking today. So whether that's even just starting with some marketing, doing some interesting content together with products and service offerings that exist that are in your world, there can be really a lot of value in just that brand side stuff, which is naturally going to drive demand for you. It's going to drive, again, pipeline getting created and you being able to establish more opportunities for your business. So definitely those are reasons to look at these different ideas we're talking about today and see if you can optimize what you're spending and optimize these channels accordingly.
Yeah, one thing that I've seen in my own experience, just in the company that I'm working in right now, some of these partners have massive databases of customers that we would never be able to uncover ourselves. And so, having that relationship, not only do you have the credibility because all of a sudden you're associated with this brand that those customers already know, but now you know those customers and you would probably have spent, months of time if you ever were able to uncover all those clients. So getting access to those leads lists and then knowing that you've got an open door to follow up with them all is just a really big benefit. The other thing I think I would think about is long-term and longevity, right? So your company is going to change, they're going to change. and those relationships actually give you some sustainability over time. So as your market evolves, there's expertise access there, and you know, because you have that partnership, you're probably both in a better place to handle the market as things evolve.
What are some of the pros and cons of partner sales versus direct sales?
Yeah, so let's start with cons. You definitely increase complexity in the opportunity. This is a big one. So, you know, you gotta, whether it's originated by you and your team or the partner, it's like, who's doing what here? You know, you have to orchestrate. It's, you know, in many cases, hard enough for the leaders, sales leaders on the call to organize your own team around a deal, never mind two parties. So that's a big one. You know, loss of control of the cycle is similar to that, where you're just like, you know, again, there's miscommunication that happens, which kills deals. That's another con. Reduced per sale profits is another one I would highlight. So if you think about, depending on, again, how well you've orchestrated your partner agreement with the company and what you're planning to do, you know, it can definitely impact that. On the pro side, there's a lot we talked about. Again, costs, again, I'd emphasize, right? You're going to get into deals, build pipeline faster. Ideally, you're going to be able to scale more effectively is the idea, right? So if you have a sales force, as Heather mentioned, that exists, a big lead list, a big database you can get access to, it's a layup sale. Ideally, it's really an awesome add-on for, say, the partner. That's a great revenue stream for them. It's also going to impact you, and you can really nicely scale alongside that, right? Expansion to new markets. So if you think about a lot of us trying to go international, or maybe it's even geographic, just territories, or, you know, depending again on your business, you can identify a partner within that particular market and expand very quickly in that market. It might be, you know, we're all remote today, but in many industries, the feet on the street matters too, right? And so having access to some of those folks that might be on the street and being able to get into those markets that you want to quicker is a huge pro as well. And then, you know, again, just emphasizing credibility again. We all know how hard it is. We're in a startup environment. People don't know who the heck we are. We're knocking on the door. We're saying, hey, listen to me. I want to sell you stuff. Having the credibility of a partner, if it's a bigger name, and we can talk more about that in a bit as to how we do that. But the reality is, if you have that credibility of a partner, being able to be in the conversation with you to help support you, help enable the deal to happen, is going to be just massive for your business. So thinking about your ecosystem, that word is big in my mind. What is the ecosystem that exists around your offering and what value you bring to the game is going to really help you think about, you know, how this can be proactive and really support your business.
A couple other things I would add to that, and they can be a little bit of pro and a little bit of con. One is, in order to make a partner successful, you need to know what the hell you're doing in your market. So if you don't have a good sales process and you don't know who your customers are and you don't know your value prop, a partner is not going to be able to succeed no matter what. So you know, one of the things this does is actually act as a forcing function for making sure that you know what your direct sales team is doing, and it can actually amp up your game on the direct sales side. So there's some big pluses there. The other thing to think about is customer retention. And so, you know, again, when you have a partner and you have that credibility, often partners are selling your product as one of a few in a suite, and they'll tie them all together. So it can keep that customer stickier over time versus selling direct, where really your value prop is specifically tied to your product. So having a partner can help you with your retention.
So I had a question come in, and it might be one that we were going to get to later, but maybe for the benefit of our listeners, we can bring it up now. As a startup with a smaller customer base, reach, and brand awareness, approaching more established partners as a channel, how do you make the win more compelling for them when initially you might have more gain?
I think we got to send whoever asked that question $50, because isn't that like one of the next slides?
I know. That's bad. I think it's literally might be the next one.
I think it might be too. Let's jump down. Oh no, yeah, it's two down.
All right, we'll circle back to it.
Anyway,
so
yeah, we're gonna get there for sure.
Let's take this one. How do I know what types of partnerships are right for my business?
Yeah, so the way I think about this, my own experience, it's very easy to get pulled into this idea of reseller. We talked about that earlier, right? Someone's just going to go and sell my stuff for me, right? The age-old story. I don't need to build a sales team. I don't need to build, you know, any of this horsepower. I can just hand my product to someone. It's so great, and someone's just going to resell it for me. Rarely, if ever, happens. Again, not speaking to every company out there, but for most of them, certainly my experience, you have to start with some of the ones we mentioned earlier. It's very natural to start with sort of some marketing together. First, identify and have a real clear reason for doing partnership, right? Are they committed? Are you committed? Does it really make sense? If we look at the value that our solutions provide, is there a joint adjacent, example there? Start from there. That turns nicely into marketing. Naturally, we can do some blog content. We can talk about some of the existing value points that we both provide and how we play well together. That's kind of a good start. From there, it moves naturally into the referral affiliate model. I think if you can naturally get, people excited about the value that can be driven for their base, I think retention with the core view of retention, as Heather mentioned, right? I have a customer's getting value. If I keep bringing more value to the table as a success team or an account management team, they're going to stay with us. So if I can bring this other company that's great and new and does awesome work into the picture, it's going to bring credibility for me as well, right? So I personally think that it's really smart to start there, right? Start small, get an understanding before you certainly jump into trying to enable another sales force or another team to sell your product. We all know how hard it is to stand up our own team and get them effective and enabled. It creates even trickier dynamics when you're trying to do it for another company. So typically what I see is, you have to get to a certain level of stature as a business. You have to have a sales force, to Heather's points, that's working. We have playbooks, we have sales operations, and we have this button down. So we know how this works. Now we're in a position to teach people and open up that channel, open up an ability to get them to sell. So I like to think about it in that sort of order, to synchronize things. Naturally, again, depending on your company, integrations and OEM or other ideas may come in if you're hardware and things sooner. But for most business to business situations, my advice would be to kind of start with the lighter weight ways to feel things out, make sure that there is value, test that with the customer, much like you would a direct sale. And then you're going to start to evolve it and build more distribution as you go.
Yeah, I would totally agree. All of my experience on the hardware side says exactly the same thing. And testing may look a little different depending on the kind of company you have and the kind of target market that you're trying to reach. But starting small and expanding from there, starting with one partner and expanding as you learn more and as you know more is far better than trying to engage a whole bunch of partners at once, especially when you're a small team.
How can partners help me during COVID-19?
Similarly to everything we've discussed, credibility, being able to access the market. Right now, some of us, depending on what our value proposition is to the market and what our offering is, being able to access through a partner that has, again, we're ideally working a base of customers. If you don't have a big base of customers, you're trying to access one. A partner can help you get there. So they might be, again, entrenched with a good base of customers. They're trying to bring more value. You can bring that. So during this period of time, for those of us that are in a tricky situation based on trying to go, hit people up on LinkedIn and make the emails and try and get access, to try and talk to some of your partners or potential partners and work through a bit of the strategy we're discussing today could definitely open up a door for you that might be a little bit easier discussion and ultimately still going to be able to drive some growth for you during this period.
One of the things that I've seen in a couple of companies I'm working with is this is a great time for partners to create content together. So organizations, especially organizations that are really struggling through COVID, so ones where people are working more from home, ones where maybe their industry has slowed down or gone through a radical change, they're looking for industry leaders to tell them what they should be paying attention to and giving them good insight. And so working together with a partner to build webinars, to do blog content, like all those kind of things right now, people are consuming more of it because they're trying to learn and respond to all the shit that's flying their way. So this is a great time to collaborate with a partner on that kind of thing.
Awesome. So then we get to choosing your partners. And let's kick it off there with, I'm a startup, why would anyone want to partner with me? Also known as the question that has been asked the second time today.
Yeah, so I think this is a big misconception. We think that we're small, who cares about us? Why is any bigger company going to engage? They're trying to drive value for their market. The retention comment again, they're trying to keep their basic customer happy. They may be a business that's in an evolution themselves where they're trying to move in different directions. So you're trying to align with them. Like anything else in a sales type of discussion, discovery matters here, right? Understanding the objectives, the priorities of the partner and where they're headed, what their roadmap looks like is step one here, right? If you understand that well, now you're going to be able to talk about how you and your innovation and new technology and new offering is going to bring value there, right? So you'd be surprised, reaching out and is, again, if you've done the work, you need to do the pre-work. Emphasize that, right? What is your market? Why does that ecosystem surround you, right? What players or service providers versus other competitors? This sort of analysis is really important. When you understand that well, now you can reach out to the partners and your stuff. You bring insight to the party, right? You're allowed to say to them, great, here's how we're seeing it. Here's how things are evolving for us. We'd love to collaborate with you. It starts with the marketing again, and you start to move it upstream. But don't be afraid to ask. You don't ask, you don't get, right? There's definitely numerous examples of people just shot in the dark. You give it a shot, you see it, and it's a great alignment. Frankly, the other part of this is this becomes a potential acquisition path, right? Depending on what you're wanting to do as a business, you need to be careful here. I will caution this, right? But if you go to a really big business, there's a great alignment. It may turn into a bit more of an M&A situation or corporate development situation. So you have to be prepared for that. But the reality is, think about your market, do the pre-work, reach out to folks and look for that collaboration and relationship, and you'd be very surprised around what happens.
And don't just think that partners have to be large enterprises either, right? So distribution or sales and marketing partners can actually be similar in size to you, but with a complementary product or slightly bigger. In fact, some of the most productive conversations I've been part of in partnership conversations are where the two companies aren't that significantly different in size. Maybe one is 15, 20 people and one is 100 to 200 people. So they're not that radically different. The cultural alignment in that case starts to get really good, really solid, and you can add a lot of value to each other and actually find working together really simple. So don't forget when you're looking at partnerships, don't forget to look at the smaller companies as well as larger ones. They're all important or can be important.
Yeah, look at companies a leg up in the journey from you. I think it's a great point. Going at enterprise gets a lot stickier quick. There's more complexity, more asks of you. It tends to get messy, and you want to guard your time here, right? You can spend a lot of cycles on this. So looking at a company, again, adjacent to you that plays in your space, you're going to learn a lot from them. There's usually more openness there. And so start there. It doesn't have to be the biggest player in the game, to make it worth your while. Think about just how your products come together, how your solutions come together, and start there. That's an easier way to think about it.
Agreed.
Awesome. I hope that also gives a good answer to the question asked in chat. If there is anything more nuanced that you'd like to ask as a follow-up question, feel free to type it into the chat and I'll make sure to bring it up before the end of the session. Next question would be, how do I evaluate potential partners? What are some of the things that I should be looking for?
Yeah, to start with, it's sort of maturity as the main bucket, I would say, of the business, right? Again, you're doing an evaluation. Where are they in their product's life cycle or their business's life cycle, right? What's that maturity curve look like in terms of their sales organization, their go-to-market, similar to yours, right? Are they that leg up? Do they have 5 sales reps? You have 1. Like, where are you? That's one way to think about it first. Target market's important, obviously. Back to segmentation, it all begins there. What markets are you attacking? Are you a mid-market sale? Are you an enterprise sale? Are you focused on similar geographies? Unpack the targeting and the account mapping is how I think about that, which we can talk further about. Buyer profiles, target buyers, right? Are you going in through product management? Are you going in through support? Like what entryway? Do you go bottom up? Do you go top down? These are all considerations, right, that you need to think about in terms of access and who your buyer is. Product integration and just, that general idea back to the ecosystem. So you want to really evaluate that, right? Is this something that plays well with us? How do you do your checklist for this? How do you pro and con it and think about, if it's worth going down that path? Is there engineering resources? Is there things that we're going to have to spend? What does that all look like? So evaluate accordingly. And then back to lastly, I would say kind of just general growth strategy, right? What is the vision? Can we have that conversation? Are we high enough in the organization to have that conversation? Is there a similar path that we're on? Does that make sense? Those are similar, or those are checklist items I think about and definitely want to align with before putting any resources into a partnership. So those are a few to think about.
And don't forget cultural fit. I'm astounded at how often that gets forgotten in all this. And if you are not working with a partner that gets your culture and whose culture you feel like you can be comfortable with, it's very unlikely that your customers are going to have a good experience as well. So just be aware of that. It doesn't mean you have to be the same. You don't have to have the same culture, but you can't feel like you're at odds, like you value different things. And to Chad's point earlier, I also would not forget the opportunity for things like acquisition in the future or a bigger, different partnership. It may be that puts extra weight on the opportunity with that potential partner. It may be that it puts some extra caution into your conversations. So, thinking about that bigger picture, long-term view of how the relationship might evolve over time and what that company is interested in from you. Is it just the innovation? Is it value to the customer? Or is there interest in that kind of potential acquisition? Make sure you've got those in your mind before you go too far down the path with a partner.
And once you've found, all those dimensions to fit, how do you negotiate with a potential partner, especially if they're much larger than your startup?
Short answer, bring a deal to the table, right? Easiest way to do it, right? You have revenue in hand. You have a customer that wants to do business, right? Think about it in the sales sense for a second. You've created an opportunity with the customer, okay? You then engage a partner and say, look, I got a deal here. Their ears perk up, right? That's the best way to come to it. I think, whether it's marketing and stuff too, if you can come with an opportunity, you can come with clarity, you can come with, you've done your homework. That's the best way to start any negotiation. The clarity around purely the negotiation piece evolves, right? Naturally, you need a framework. You need to think about what this looks like. Are you focused on the referral strategy? What makes the most sense for them? Again, you need to think about doing the deep dive, getting the relationship and trust developed first. And that's usually give before you take, deposits before withdrawals, right? Make some deposits in them, bring a deal to the table, reference them in your marketing, speak about them well in the marketplace, do your research on G2 Crowd. There's a bunch of things you can do. In this world we're in, where you can do this background research, that's going to go so far for you. And then negotiation gets a lot easier, right? Now it's great. I brought you in, you can do a bit of a rev share. We can start to evolve how our teams get engaged. And you want to think about it as a natural progression. And that negotiation is going to get a lot easier for you if you focus on those front end objectives.
I also would not forget that you need to be prepared to walk away. If we're going to end up in a situation where it's not a win-win, where the partner is dragging their feet, maybe they're not engaging with you in the way you expect, you're uncovering something like a poor cultural fit, whatever it might be, but don't be afraid to walk away. The best partnerships are ones where both companies are fully committed, fully engaged, and ready to really collaborate. And if you're not getting those signals, if you're finding they're real assholes at the negotiating table, or they're playing those power games that sometimes happen, just walk away. It's not worth it. The negotiation is a really good chance to sort of see the truth of how the relationship will work long term, and it can be very telling.
Let's dive into setting up for success. Heather, maybe we can kick it off with you on this question. How are partner sales different from quote unquote normal sales?
Absolutely. And so, if we think about partnership sales, it kind of goes back to what we talked about before. The partner may be offering your product as part of a suite, and you need to make sure that they understand really clearly how your product and the value your product brings fits into all the other things. So your product is going to be competing in a lot of cases for time from the sales team. So that partner sales team will be selling a suite of products. Yours will be one. You want to make sure it gets to the top of the pipe. So for a quote unquote normal or direct sales model, that's all they're selling, right? It's your stuff or no stuff. It's quite different in a partner sales model. So being really clear on how that value is magnified with your product for their customer, and then how your product fits into their portfolio. You've got to be able to explain those things and articulate them well, and help them understand how their sales cycle is either going to be better, faster, or higher producing in revenue and margin than it would be without you. All that needs to happen in the very early part of your journey with your partner.
Yeah, just quick to add to that, I think about partnerships as sort of, in my head, it's like a two-step model versus a one-step. One step being I'm directly engaging with the customer. In this case, you're managing a second party, right? So there is that complexity I mentioned earlier that you need to think about. It's really important that you iron out the buyer journey, customer journey with the partner. So you know that, okay, in this case, your team has originated the deal, they've created the deal, we're coming in and there's an add-on here. How are we going to do that together, right? What's the best approach? How can we be on the same page? There's definitely a big difference there. You're not in full control of just how your team's going to operate around a deal. You're going to have to collaborate. And this is all, again, up front, what you need to do well when you set things up and discover this together. But it's like, how does your process work? Here's how our process works. Let's unpack those, and let's come to the table with who the resources are on each side that are going to work together. You know, these details really matter in the partner sale versus the direct sale where it's just, you know, your sales team every day working together on your process. So those are things to really consider as well. You want to make sure, similar to what you do with your team, that you are opening up that discussion with the partner so that you have alignment.
And make sure that my partners are selling my products.
So I think it goes back exactly to what we talked about before. It's making sure that the sales team, so the people that are actually out on the street talking to customers, are well equipped and really understand it well. So part of getting a channel onboarded has got to be working directly with their sales team and training them directly. So giving them all the resources they need, whether it's you know, marketing materials, PowerPoint presentations, you know, whatever it might look like, even updates to their website, all the things that make that process as simple as possible so that they don't have to do any work to sell your product. It's just a nice natural fit when they're out in front of the customer. It just happens almost automatically because there's a loss to them if they don't do it. The other thing I think we want to make absolutely sure of when we're talking to our customers and their partners is that they're incentivized. So they have, you know, whether it's a sales team or the partner overall, they have some financial and potentially other reasons to sell your product. So it's, you know, the value and increase in commission because they're able to get a bigger, better sale, but it may even be additional financial incentives depending on the product and the sort of complexity of that sales team that might help them, especially in the early days, to get that attention. So if you have especially if you have a high margin sale, you know, high dollar value, offering them some incremental financial incentive can be pretty helpful.
Just one thing I would add is cadence is what I call it, or rhythm. So how the frequency, similar to internal, again, the frequency you meet, the frequency you get in sync as a group. So is that weekly? You know, can you structure a pipeline discussion? Can you work through things really a little more formally to drive the behaviors that you're both aligning on? So a lot of people just it's kind of like, oh, I just want to set it and forget it, and I'll hope orders come in. I think it's important. You have to manage it. You have to manage the cadence or the rhythm with the partner to, you know, to stay on it, and you want to think about that for sure.
Absolutely. And it really goes to communication, which I think is a theme in the next couple of slides as well. And just being really effective at sharing with that partner on an ongoing basis what's going on, what you know, what they might need to know to be successful.
And how do I make sure my customers get a consistent experience, no matter whether they buy from the partner or from my own company directly?
And it really does start with communication, right? So working directly with that partner, making sure that they understand exactly what that customer is expecting. Like Chad talked about, mapping out that customer journey, making sure that the partner understands what it looks like for them with your product, giving them those materials and making sure they're trained on them, they understand them, and then reiterating it, going back to it. Actually, I heard recently about a company who makes every single sales employee and every single sales partner go through an annual training cycle, no matter if they've been with the company for 1 year or 20. And I think that's a phenomenal way to make sure you get a consistent experience. When I managed partners in my BlackBerry days, we did the same thing. We would go back and make sure that they had the right resources, the right material, constantly updating and training and retraining to make sure that that experience stayed consistent no matter who the customer was buying from. But we also need to remember that there will be some differences. You just want to make sure those differences are not on the things that matter, right? They're not pitching a totally different value. They're not degrading your ability to sell direct.
Yeah, this is all upfront again. You got to set the expectations. You know, shout out, there's definitely some good products that are growing in the space around sales training, partner enablement. Lessonly is one you could look at. I've, you know, used them in the past where you set up an actual partner portal. This is more evolved thinking, but you have, you know, actually your decks, your documents, your process built into a bit of a training module that both your direct team and your partners can gain access to. So it really helps drive that. Another thing I like to do is just a deal registration process. It seems simple, but trying to stay with it is important. So you register if a partner has a deal, you know, with X account, you register that under their name, in a process for doing so. This can start in a Google Sheet, prior to getting more evolved with CRM and other activity, but just those two things tend to support this as well. So how can you, just continue to educate, continue to bring value to how you're enabling through content and otherwise.
How would you compensate your partners?
Compensation is such a fascinating topic. And frankly, it's a hard topic even around direct sales, right? So we're all still trying to figure out, how do I pay my sales team? And paying your partners can be hard to work out as well. So, a couple of things we want to think about. One is, like Chad talked about before, what's the model we're following? Are we creating content together and just doing lead gen for one another? Are we doing a joint sales effort where both of us are involved in the process? Is that customer dealing only with our partner, and is that partner managing the whole funnel from top to bottom? All three of those models are going to imply very different compensation. So you want to think about kind of the relationship and what it looks like, and figure out from there what the basis should be for compensation. Couple other things I would think about. One is your first couple of partners, the comp model for them is probably going to be different than future partnerships because you're working stuff out. And, the first company I worked for, we ended up with about 75 channel partners. The first partner had about 10x better compensation than any other partner ever saw ever again. And we swore that partner to secrecy because otherwise we would have been in pretty deep trouble. So just be aware that that's probably the case. Don't set up anything that's, massively long-term or, doesn't allow you some flexibility for later. And make sure that you think about those terms with every new partner that you come up with, not just the first time through and then just repeat the model. So there's lots of things to think about there, but I hope that gives you some. I also want to make sure that whatever you do in terms of partnership compensation is tied to success. So it's not tied to, having that relationship. It's not tied to them, buying inventory from you. It needs to be tied to mutual success and truly mutual success. So customer revenue from them through to you.
Super quick add would be just know your financial model. Get into the weeds. What does the cost of your sale look like? Do you understand that well? Do you have some sort of assumptions from the market? Do you know that it's going to take this long to sell your product? What does that cost you? That's going to inform how you compensate the partner in that mix. So margins, these types of calculations from a financial perspective, you want to definitely start there. And then, again, if you're doing a referral model, a little more simple, it's more of kicking back revenue when a deal transaction happens versus, more complex models for throughput to services or to resell play. But, you want to start from first principles around your financial model. What makes sense for you from that perspective, and what then you can figure out what you're willing to pay.
Getting into managing the relationship. So Heather, I'd love to know, I have partners now, and how should I be managing them?
That's a great question. I see a lot of companies who have those first few partners in place and they kind of go, oh shit, what do I do now? So, if you haven't already established some of those first principles that we talked about, regular communication, like Chad mentioned earlier, ongoing calls, training, making sure that they understand the customer journey, the sales cycle, and doing some of those joint efforts. If you aren't in that meaningful, really solid relationship already, those are some places to start. Another thing you might want to think about is actually identifying somebody on your team whose responsibility it is to manage that relationship on an ongoing basis. So they have one person that they know they can go to for any questions or concerns. And that one person has a highly invested interest in making sure that that partner succeeds. So, creating that really trusting, deep integration between the two partners is where you need to start. And keeping that communication going over time, also really essential. If you're not seeing success from particular partners, maybe you've had them for a little while and you haven't seen any kind of meaningful sales, start there. And then maybe have a conversation in a quarter or so with that partner if you're not seeing the investment that you're making pay off. And just have a conversation about whether this is the right fit, right? A lot of companies, when they're starting to explore partnership, realize that maybe the opportunistic partnerships they've already established aren't quite the right ones for their business as it scales. And there's nothing wrong with making a change if you need to make that change. So, do go back to first principles, start doing those things that we've talked about around communication, training, identified resources, and so on. And then pay attention to how it's working. If it doesn't start to pay off, have that conversation about perhaps moving on.
What does a partnership team actually do, and what kind of skill set should I be looking for when I hire them?
Well, you just need somebody who can do it all the time. No, I'm kidding. But what you do need in a partner relationship, I think I would start with two key skill sets. One is the partner team inside your company needs to be exceptionally good at communicating and managing conflict. So if they can't do that, if they can't work with outside parties and kind of manage the relationship, manage the conflict when it comes up, they're going to really struggle. So that's number one. Number two, in my mind, is especially in the early stages, having somebody who can do excellent program management, not project management. I don't want to think about it in those tactical terms, but program management. Think about what does success look like and how do we get there, and what are the structured steps that we can work through together as partners to get to a successful partnership. Those skills are also super helpful. And then beyond that, somebody who's got great relationships internally with the sales team, with the marketing team, and frankly, even with the customer success team. So these folks become a bit of a plug between the internal organization at your organization and the internal organization at your partner. And the whole relationship revolves around that person or small team that manages the relationship.
Yeah, my experience has been really interesting with this in testing. As going through a rapid scale phase, you're sort of identifying aspects in your team. So if you don't have a channel team or partnerships team yet, I've had a lot of success with even recruiters, whether they're inside the business or outside the business. You can think about the job of recruitment. It's similar to this in a sense that you're evaluating, you're sort of running through a funnel. It has sort of that sales context, but it's different than sales, right? It's different than just directly selling. So I've had some recruiters be really good partner people. I've had some sales development reps who are more, show that strategic view and the way that they message and the way they manage relationships move into a partner role. I've had customer success people and program managers, to Heather's point, where they're just really good at managing that surface area, and they're able to to set things up correctly and identify things and work through that communication path. So it's definitely important to look at the team you have, right? You can explore this internally. Someone that might not be just straight down the middle doing the direct sale, you can maybe shift gears a bit with them based on what you're seeing in their activity and just who they are, and have that discussion with them. So it's very interesting to look at the different sort of pockets that may exist in your main sort of business functions as you start to create a partnership team. Those are some ideas.
And how do I deal with channel conflict?
So let's define channel conflict up front. Because I think sometimes there's a little bit of misunderstanding. So typically channel conflict arises when two different partners are going after the same customer. And the really important thing we need to do up front is make sure that we're communicating clearly when we establish the relationship, how you're going to reach out to customers. So if there are, for example, perhaps you may have some customers that you say, I only want that customer to deal with me directly. That needs to be established upfront. If you are allowing that partner to go after a particular industry vertical or a particular geography or a particular group of customers or their own customers, for example, all that needs to be made really clear upfront. And as you add new partners, you want to share with them, here are some protected customer bases that we have already established. So, industry A, that's off the table. You may have some identified customers there, but for us, we only sell to industry A through another channel partner. And so the more transparent you can be, the more open you can be, and the more upfront you can be about those things, the better. If you are in a situation where you have a channel or multiple channels already and you're seeing some conflict, if it's direct versus the channel, I would suggest, at least in my view, that you want to let the channel have those relationships, and maybe you support them in a more involved way, or you support them a little more directly for those relationships. But I would not get into conflict with the channel yourself. So if there's a relationship there with the channel and with the customer, collaborate. Work together. Don't fight with one another on it. And if you have a situation where you've got two partners going after the same customer, I think what you need to do is have an honest conversation with them and see if there's something that you can work out together in such a way that allows us all to win, right? So it may be a little bit difficult up front, but the more you can do to communicate and handle these conflicts before they happen, the better.
Two quick adds to that would be get it in your agreement up front, an account mapping process, talk through, these are accounts that are already owned on both sides. You have to have some transparency, right? Typically you'd have an NDA you'd get in place, you'd have some open discussions, right? That can be listed in your, say, referral agreement as an example. And there's templates we can share if anyone's interested around this, but you list those out. Those are clear. These are owned accounts, like these are kind of off the table in a way. And then you have the registration process I mentioned earlier. So from a deal perspective, before payment happens and you align incentive, but it's like, let's make sure these deals are registered on either side, right? If I'm talking to this customer or prospect, let's register that, right, with each other so that we know. So in our respective systems or a joint system, depending on where you are in the relationship, that's known and it's listed as the source being X partner, right? That's going to help you a ton. And it's going to help you, when things fly around and maybe another partner and any of this conflict that does happen, you're going to be able to have a source of truth to come back to, which will really, really help you.
Agreed.
Awesome. So I want to open it up here to the group. If you have any questions, just put them into the chat. In the meantime, I have one that I'd love to ask Heather and Chad. What do I do if I have an underperforming partner? How do I deal with that situation?
Chad, do you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. Well, like anything else, it's a tricky and upfront conversation. Honesty, transparency matters, right? I think you come back to if we've set up well, which is always where this starts, right? We started the conversation around, here's the roadmap together. Here's the right journey that we're on. If you've properly set goals and you've set objectives, which as we all know is vital, we've done some planning. To me, that allows the correction conversation to be a lot simpler, right? So if we know we're going here, we're not going there, and it's not happening, now I can come back to the conversation and say, look, here's where my expectations were. Here's where I think we are. This may or may not be working out. So similar to any other conflict that you have to manage, which is always a tricky conversation, I think, again, starting from that and doing your setup well is going to make that so much easier for you, right? Create alignment. Now you're going to be able to talk about expectations and ultimately performance and be able to sort of move on that whichever way you need to.
And I would go back to what we talked about a little earlier too, where if you're already in a relationship, make sure those fundamentals are in place, right? So you've got the contract, you can go back and have those performance conversations, but make sure you're investing as well. Make sure that you are doing those things you need to do to make them successful. They're not going to be magically successful all by themselves, right? So that means you need to be giving some thought to how you can do that with them.
While I'm waiting for questions from the audience to come in through chat, I have one more. What to do if customers want to buy from me directly rather than from the partner? We spoke about channel conflict when two partners are competing for the same customer. What to do if both the partner and my company are interested in the same customer? Heather, do you want to kick it off this time?
Sure. And I was going to say, I think that what I think the difference is between you're both reaching out to the same customer and there's channel conflict and the customer having an expressed interest in working directly with you. There is a little bit of a difference there, right? In one case, it's the two companies wanting to reach out to the customer. In the other case, it's the customer making a decision about buying. And so in the past, when I've had that kind of situation come up, what I've actually done is pay the channel who had the relationship with the customer as though they'd closed the deal, but allowed the customer to work directly with me and just kept the channel in the loop through the whole thing. So always want to act in the best interest of the customer, but you also want to remember that that channel relationship should have equal value, right? Because the channel is bringing you lots of customers and gives you other things like we've already talked about on this session. So I would suggest very strongly that if you do have that customer come to you, let them buy from you directly, but act as though they've bought through the partner and keep that partner in the loop unless the customer specifically asks you not to.
That's so bang on, Heather. And we're talking about good faith here, right? You're trying to build an ecosystem. You're trying to support. The more that you can do exactly what Heather mentioned, if there is a bit of conflict around the sourcing or where it came from, look, operate in good faith, provide support to people. You want to engage. It's back to the give and take here, right? Make that deposit to them. Here's a little bit of money on the deal. I know that we were sort of weirdly engaged here. Here you go. That's a great way to operate as a leader. And it's going to go a long way. That's going to go real far for you. Next time, all of a sudden next week, you get 3 calls because of it, right? So think about that a lot in these different situations with partners. Operate in good faith and think about how it's going to support you longer term.
Absolutely.
I haven't seen any questions come in through the chat, so I think we're gonna cap it here for today. And as I mentioned in the beginning, if anyone on this call, says to themselves, "Wow, I'd love to work with Heather or with Chad," they are available for you through your Communitech advisor or customer success manager. So just let us know that you're interested, and whether you'd like to be connected with both or either one, and we'd be happy to make that introduction for you. Thanks
Awesome.
again for joining us today. I hope there was lots of really good stuff in it for you. I certainly know that I've learned a lot today. And thank you so much to Heather and Chad for joining us for the Ask Me Anything session today.
Thanks for being part of it. It was an honor to be here.
Thanks, everyone.